Hey Lynn, what's going on? Like I promised, I go over some of this evidence I got, and some of it was actually pretty compelling. Gotta forgive the whole glare glasses and all that, because up close and far away my eyesight sucks. You know, if it's medium distance I can handle it, but we're just gonna have to work with the glasses, glare and all that. But the thing is kind of creeped me out at the same time, but also kind of surprised me was if any of you guys know the name Winifred Collins, she was a war hero, and she was captain in the U.S. Navy during World War II. I'm going to try to focus this in as best I can to show you exactly the conversation I had with Winifred. Now, I didn't know that I was actually talking to Winifred Collins. I mean, you know, and that's the beauty about this whole thing. You never know who you're going to talk to. You never know if it's going to be just a regular old, you know, person like you and I, or if it's going to be somebody famous, you know. And everything that, you know, that was said on here matches exactly to history facts about Winifred. Because I remember she said something about winning awards, and I asked her, I said, what kind of awards? And she says, medals, double. And sure enough, she won 2 medals. She won the Bronze Star and the Legion of Merit. So, there you go. So anyway, that was just a little taste of what's to come. This is a pretty compelling conversation I had with her. So let me try to go ahead and get this focus in, so you know, because I got all this saved on the Ovilus here. So let me go ahead and show you. Now, when I first started talking, you know, I said, you know, my name, of course, and then I asked what, you know, the spirit's name was. She said Winifred. She was an aristocrat. Sure enough, she was. Mystery It, I think she didn't quite have enough energy to actually come through and actually say, you know, the rest of that. But she just said mystery and then crew award. And I asked her, I said, oh, okay, what awards? She said double. See, there's the word double, and that's the two medals that she received. Then she said Vicksburg, missiles, and a trail. Trail. So I looked up, you know, when the USS, because I knew there was a USS Vicksburg, which is a battleship, right? And it was commissioned during World War II. And of course it fired missiles. And lumber I'm not quite sure of, but oatmeal, that's one of the things that they always feed you when you're in the Navy, because I spent 2 years in the Navy after I was in the Army. Let's pull this up a little bit. Oops. Oh, oop. Technical difficulties here. Very stupid keyboard. I don't want the keyboard. Jeez, come on, piece of shit. So that was what I got from Winifred. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you. Now the conversation wasn't that long, but she seemed to be very calm, very helpful, and very willing to talk, which is the cool part. So seemed like a pretty nice lady in life, and she died in 1999 at age 87. God rest her soul. And this thing's not focusing, so sorry about that. And so yeah, it's pretty cool. And right now I'm going to show you the page to where all the facts are about this. And oops. So now, because a few of the things I showed you were really compelling, about what she said about being an aristocrat, which is correct. She was a chief of the naval personnel for women in the United States Navy. Plus, she was a director of WAVES, which was Women's Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Services, from 57 to 62. Okay, remember when she said she got an award? She got double. That means 2. You know, they use that word database as best they can. And I guess double came up before 2 because D comes way before T. She got the Bronze Star, and she also got the Legion of Merit. Those are big deals. And then she mentions that she was widowed and she was married to an admiral. Well, it turns out that the two husbands that she had, she was married to Rear Admiral Howard Lyman Collins, and he was an admiral. There you go. That's pretty compelling. Then she mentions the Vicksburg, and then she says missiles, and then she says oatmeal. And I know from, you know, being in the Navy for 2 years after I got out of the Army, that oatmeal is like a big thing that they serve on the ship, on all ships. And here's the USS Vicksburg right here. Is a battleship just like I knew, and it was a Ticonderoga class missile guided cruiser. And she mentioned missiles. She mentioned Vicksburg. And here it is. It was commissioned during World War II. And that's the battleship right there. And it's now sitting, you know, in retirement and everything. But then I had another discussion with a woman named Annette. Now, I never quite found out exactly who Annette was or is, but she too was in the Navy, and she mentioned the Ambrose. So here, and this is kind of a longer conversation that I had with her, and she was very open and very happy to talk. So here's some of the words that are on here. Let me straighten this out a little bit here. It's kind of difficult since this camera's tilted. So of course, once again, I asked, you know, I gave my name and asked. She said Annette. And she says detect, summer, accumulate. And she says heartsick. And she said skirt, which I guess is what the female officers back then wore. You know, because they couldn't wear pants like they do today. Let's see, cereal. I don't know what you meant by that, Rose. Mutiny on the Ambrose. And she says she made a very loud bang. It was due to someone being careless. Now, I looked it up, and the USS Ambrose is actually a haunted ship. It was served in World War II as well. I'm going to scroll up here a little bit. And then on here, she mentioned metal. I asked her, I said, was it shrapnel or anything? She says, no, I doubt it. And then I said, I asked her, I said, where she's from. She said, Camilla, which is in Georgia. And she said, zap pancreas acid. And she mentioned she was, she was Greek. And there was an alarm. And I suppose that what she was talking about was maybe what happened on the ship, because the Ambrose did get hit. I believe it got hit by a torpedo in World War II, but still it didn't sink, of course. He just says there was a spray of color. Then she mentioned that she lived in a Victorian. And then after that, she goes on to mention Kirkland, which is also in Georgia. It's right outside of the Savannah, Georgia area. And it's actually called Kirkland Grove, which I found out. And she couldn't say it, in both words in one sentence, so she says Kirkland. And she says Grove. Kirkland Grove. And she says it was heavenly. Says something about a shark. I'm not quite sure what she meant by shark. And she says cavalry. She disapproved of something, but the Windsor. That's the main deal here, because there's a hotel in Windsor. And it's historic now. It's quite old, and I'll show you guys that website here in just a second here. And then she says she can, see what's in here, and all these foods and everything are mentioned. They're in my refrigerator. And then she mentions Camellia again. And in here, she said spiders, which I have a lot in my house. I always have spiders in my house, but I don't kill them because they, keep the bugs and stuff away in the summertime, which is coming up. These are just harmless spiders, so they're not really going to bite me. Now out in my mudroom there, across from me, I had a wrench. I had a big old wrench. I have a big crescent wrench. She said she sees a wrench, and she says, and she asked me, what the address was, and I told her, And she says, "What hour is it?" And I told her the hour, and she says, "Applaud." She says she had a patient who was an aunt. Then she mentioned somebody named Leonard. And $1, because I had $1 in my drawer. And she says it was just one single dollar. It was inside my wallet and my drawer there. So I found that pretty compelling. I've spent that dollar since then, but said there's a representative named Carl, and then she mentions gunboats. Let me scroll up here for a second. Now here's another good one. This is not, of course, from anybody famous that I know of. But this one makes a really compelling, a really awesome reference to something that I never mentioned to any of these spirits, and you know, and this is a gift given to me by my ex by about I'd say about 3 years ago. I just kept it ever since, and you know, it's the white lion that I keep in my couch. You know, just like the cartoon I mentioned earlier, I named him Lambert. You know, just for, you know, I always figured, you know, you get a plush stuffed animal, you might as well give him a name, right? So I gave him a name, Lambert. I never, you know, that's never come up in a conversation before. So, you know, how would anybody know about that? But I'm going to show you guys something that's really just kind of made me, you know, kind of like, whoa. But at the same time, that was kind of cool, because that is just pure evidence right there. That's compelling. You can't argue with that. Okay, how else are they going to know from the other side that my stuffed cat is named Lambert? And also a key feature about Lambert that nobody else would know, because I never brought it up to even living people, even just regular people I know. So they haven't even noticed it. They just know he's there. He's on the couch, you know. Yeah, I adorn my couch with skulls, hats, flags, and now Lambert, you know. And I got a couple pillows. So my couch is pretty full. I mean, it's pretty hard to sit on it, because you know, I just lay my jacket on my couch, because I really hardly ever sit on it unless I'm watching a movie or whatever. So that came up in this conversation. Apparently it starts out as an individual. I guess their name was Wesson, is what they were indicating, and they're from Poland. But the thing is Wesson was hung. Now, was Wesson hung in Poland? I don't know. And then he says key. Two keys. Because I told him, I said, he said key, and I said, are you referring to the keys that I have on my door? Because I got 2 keychains hanging on my door. One that actually goes to my front door, and the other one that goes to the old lock that I used to have. I just never took it down, and it's below the main keychain that I use. I just never got rid of the old key. I don't know. It's never bothered. Hasn't been a big thing to me. Let it hang there. I don't care. So anyway, he says there's 2, and for sure there's 2 keychains. There's 2 sets of keys hanging on my door. So that's relevant to them being able to see what's in my room, what's in my, my home, but this immediate room. And he said bourbon. Well, I was drinking some soda at the time. I was drinking some Coke, and I guess it resembles a little bit of bourbon. Or maybe he used to drink bourbon out of a, similar glass or whatever. But he mentions bourbon while I was sitting there drinking drinking some Coke out of a glass. And then he says, wave. So I went ahead and waved. And I said, are you in this room, man, right now? And he says, up. He says, during the day. As you can see there, it says day. Right there, it says day. It says squirrel. And it was during the day, and there's a lot of squirrels outside. And he says the squirrel was cowardly. So the squirrel must have been able to sense him or see him or something. I'm getting a lot of fellow veterans, military people coming through. And then he says Newton. I said, well, what happened with Newton? Who's Newton? And he declined to answer. So I said, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize and everything. And he said something melted. And he suggested, suggest, and I said, what do you suggest? He says an assistant. And then I get oatmeal a lot, so this must have been a veteran. Maybe he was in the military, and being in the military, for MREs and for naval meals for breakfast, you get fed a lot of oatmeal because it's cheap, it's easy to cook, it cooks fast, and it's it fills you up. Boundary. And I asked him, I said, are you talking about the boundary of this property, of this building? And then he said, fact. And then he said, cut. I said, cut, where do you see a cut? He said, Lambert. Now you tell me that didn't, kind of freak me out a little bit. Which it did. Because after about the first year, Lambert's the seam where he was sewn, being that he was from the dollar store, he wasn't a real expensive plush toy, plush stuffed animal, whatever you want to call him. The seam that went across his belly came open, and it was a cut. It looked like a cut. And so me and my ex, we just kind of, just threw some thread in there and just kind of closed it up a little bit as best we could. It wasn't a real professional job, but it did, it worked. But you could still see it, So apparently, Wesson saw the cut on Lambert, and that's what he was referring to. So To any of you skeptics out there, what do you gotta say to that? How else would they know? They wouldn't, unless they were here, watching us. Spirits are all around us, and they always are, and they're always watching us. And about 93% of them are not harmful. They're harmless. And I know a lot of people are going to cite things from the Bible. I'm a Catholic, and I realize that too. I realize in the Old Testament it says that you know, human spirits don't hang around on earth, you know, or they either go to heaven or they go to hell, you know, and you know, they choose either one. You know, they choose to believe in God or they choose to go to hell, you know. I realize that. I realize that from a religious perspective, but I'm not talking about the religious perspective here. I'm talking about scientific evidence. A lot of the things that are written in the Old Testament, such as that, a lot of these rules that God laid out have been broken by man and broken by Satan himself. And one of the things that Satan likes to do is to keep human souls. And a couple of these spirits that I talked to were actually Christians. I don't know if it'll come up here in the time that I want to, you know, keep this video relatively short, but one of the spirits I talked to said, you know, made a reference to the crosses that I have in my room and the crosses that I have in my bedroom, and they're all blessed, including the crucifix on the wall. And also, I'm a Catholic. And she said, the Lord. I said, that's right, the Lord, Jesus Christ. She says, Lord is our Savior, God. And she says, rejoice. So, you know, that right there is telling me that, you know, she was having trouble crossing over to the light. And like I mentioned before, you know, I mean, I don't have it up right now because I don't want to run it right now because I'm kind of doing a review. But when the Ovilus runs, you know, remember I was saying earlier how there's where all these buttons here are. There's a frequency meter on there, and what it does is it tells you the color frequencies of the type of entities or spirits that are coming through. Of course, anything evil, malevolent, or dangerous in any way, shape, or form, you know, something demonic, diabolical, is going to appear as red, blue, or violet, a deep violet. Now, if you see a line or a blip on a radar that comes up as almost a black color, just turn the thing off. You don't want to mess with that, because that is a very powerful demon. That is something very evil, and you don't even want to communicate with that thing. You don't even want to keep your device on that particular device, whether it be an Ovilus, whether it be a spirit box, or whatever it is. You want to turn that device off because you don't want that entity to use as a portal to come through. So my advice is, if you see something that's really dark violet or close to a black color, a really dark color, just don't even bother with it. Just immediately turn it off, because they can use that device to come through and affect you in so many ways, and in negative ways. So that's just an advisory for me. You know, of course, do what you want, but that's just an advisory for me. Now on to the next one. I'm not gonna do all these because I got like 20 of them, but I'm gonna do some of the most compelling ones, some of the ones that actually made me say whoa, you know. And this next one I got from a Kirk who apparently was in the Philippines, and he mentioned something about borrow feather. Not quite sure exactly what he meant, but he says he was in the Philippines. There are cries. I said, what happened in the Philippines? I said, what can you tell me? And he says, friend. I said, who is a friend? He says, Iran. Because back then, oh God, I think it was about 30 years ago, Philippines and Iran were actually allies. And he started to say something, and he just got out AN. And he was talking, the time between his responses was really kind of slower than a lot of other ones. So he managed only to get out an AN. So he goes on to say something about cereal. He had a double dose. And I said, well, who got a double dose? He says, everyone got substance, meaning medicine, drugs, you know. He says in the afternoon, he says it was in the form of breakfast. And then he says, children. I said, children, what happened to the children? He says, turmoil. And then he goes, award. I said, did you get a award? He goes, no, lie. And then he said he was from Minnesota and he was blinded. And I did some research on that, and this is what else he came up with, which what else he told me. Damn it, this thing's acting up again. And then he mentions, while being in the Philippines, there's a volcano. I asked him, I said, what happened with the volcano? He said there was an alert, an advisory. I said, did the volcano erupt? He says, burn. He says, headstone. He said his name was Mitchell. And then he mentioned steam. Now, after doing some research, found out in 1991 there was a eruption in the Philippines, and I can't quite remember the name of it started with a T, but it was one of the biggest eruptions in history, besides one that was on Hawaii. But what happened was, the reason he said turmoil, burn, steam, because of the eruption, a lot of children were in turmoil and died. Over 687 people died in that eruption. And the reason he mentioned steam, and this is the reason that steam is a very important word reference to what happened. During that eruption, there was a hurricane that was going through the area, which is only about 47 miles away, which is roughly about 75 kilometers. And what happened was, right after the eruption, this hurricane came in with heavy rains. And when it hit the lava, it created a lot of steam. And what happened was, this ecologists are saying that this eruption actually caused a cooling of the earth. because when the rain hit, it caused a ton amount of steam to come up in the air, blowing all the ashes around that weren't, melted by, dissolved by the rain. But it caused a large amount of steam to come up from, lava being extinguished by the rain. So, and that happened in the Philippines, and he mentioned that he was from the Philippines. So I found that very, very good evidence, and that's all he really had to say about all of that. But it was very relevant to what actually happened. Now here we're starting to see wheel. It was referring to something totally different from the previous conversation I was having, and I asked who this new spirit was, and her name was Hannah. This was no, Hannah didn't hang around very long. Her energy dissipated quickly, and she left this plane. But while she was here, she appeared to have a good sense of humor, and she says chicken. And I didn't have any chicken in the house at the time, but I did have some chicken bones in the trash from when I did have some chicken a couple days before that. I had baked some chicken, and I remember I put the chicken bones in the trash, and it was right on top of the trash because it was pretty recent, and it was in the middle of the night, so I really didn't want to walk out in the middle of the night around here to walk around the corner and take my trash out, so I just waited till the morning. So I didn't know it was Hannah that was talking. I thought somebody was maybe talking about Hannah, so I said, are you saying that Hannah is a chicken? And she says, shrug. Like she's shrugging, like, I don't know, like I was confusing her. And I started to kind of laugh a little bit, and she said funny, and she said it was funny, and I said, what was it? She says, to what, compare. And I think what she was trying to say was the way I compared her to a chicken. So I found that kind of humorous. And then she says flag. I said flag. I said, do you have a flag, or where do you see a flag? And she says sofa. As you guys can see, what do I have over my sofa? Yeah, have you guys seen it in many of my other videos on my Blackguard 316 channel? I've had that flag there for a long time. She saw the flag right above the sofa. There you go. More evidence all this stuff is a real deal. The next one I have here is pretty good too. This was from another spirit that didn't really quite hang around a long time, and well, what happened was, I kind of feel bad for this guy because of the story he told me. And he wasn't angry, he wasn't upset, he wasn't aggressive or anything like that. He just seemed kind of not quite at ease with what happened to him with his passing, with what happened to him. And well, his name is Jeb, and from the story I'm not quite sure if this took place in the 1800s, because it sounds like it could have took place in the 1800s, or it could have took place in the early 20th century. So I don't know. But what he says here, I said, a voice said hello, and I said, I told my name, and I said, what's your name? He says, Jeb. I said, how are you doing, Jeb? And he says, affliction. And I told him I was sorry to hear that. I said, what affliction do you mean? Do you have an affliction? He says, blind. And he says, stamp, appreciate. And I said, I do appreciate you talking. And I said, thank you very much for coming through and talking. I said, I don't mean any harm or offense or anything like that. And I said, he said, those. Brigade. He was part of brigade. And I said, what happened while you were in the brigade? He said, cuts at the camp. And I had a quarter laying next to me on the desk in a dish here. And he says, quarter. And so I said, oh, so you see the quarter? I said, are you familiar with the quarter? And he says, value. And see, this is where it kind of throws me off about the timeline here, because he says launch. Because from what he was telling me about the quarter, I thought maybe it was from the Civil War or something like that. But I highlighted that on purpose so I could keep a track of where I am. And after a while, you know, all these words, they start to mash together and, you know, kind of hurt your eyes. So he says launch. I said launch. I said launch what? Cannons or artillery? And he says additional. Then he mentioned something about cactus and buttermilk. And with the barrel cactus and the yucca out in the Mojave, you could actually get buttermilk and even water from these, you know, from the fruit that comes from these cactus. And it took Jeb a pretty good effort to come through. It took him about an average of 10 seconds to make a response. So I just kind of hung in there and just wait, you know, gave him his time. Because not every spirit's energy is as strong as others, you know. Some, you know, maybe weaker at different times. You know, Jeb could come back and have his energy be, you know, much stronger. And he could respond, you know, much better. He started to say a word and all he could get out was AN. But he said promise, and I said I promise. I said, what do you want me to promise? And he says gang. And I said, what about a gang? I said, did a gang do something to you? He says captive. And he says the last thing he remembered was a yucca. So I'm thinking either he was part of the military or maybe he was maybe a U.S. Marshal or something, and maybe that's the last thing he remembers before he was killed. But they blinded him. They kept him captive and blinded the poor guy. But he was part of a brigade, so he was a good guy, and he was held captive by these bad guys, a gang of bad guys, or the enemy of some sort. But it was very vague, but it was kind of a really sad story, and I felt bad for Jeb, so I said a prayer for him. You know, I had to, and because that's a sad story. He was doing his duty in the brigade. He was held captive by the enemy, a gang of enemies, and pretty much from what I get from it, they tortured him, and they blinded him. Cuts, blinded, captive. And it appears it happened out in the West or the Midwest, because he mentioned that he had to get buttermilk and water from these yuccas and these barrel cactuses, and after that he just kind of he faded away. He didn't respond anymore, and his energy really wasn't all that strong to begin with. But still, when I closed it out, I still thanked him. You know, you always thank them, even if they're an evil spirit. You always thank them, because they're really working hard and building up a lot of energy to come through to speak with us, which is not an easy effort for them. Now what I do now is I'm going to show you just a few brief pictures that were taken on the USS Ambrose, and also a little bit about the the historic Windsor Hotel, which I was talking about earlier, how one of the spirits mentioned Windsor, and also about the USS Ambrose, which was another battleship that was commissioned in World War II, and also the Korean War. And they give tours there, and a lot of people say that the ship is indeed haunted. And they said there's a couple on there that are kind of nasty, but you know, they don't harm anyone. They're just kind of mean, just angry. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're harm. I mean, let's face what they went through. I mean, they went through World War II, for crying out loud, and you know, gave their lives and everything. This is one of the pictures taken aboard the USS Ambrose, and the person said they didn't see this with their naked eye, but when they, you know, took the photo and they brought it home on their digital camera, this is what they saw, and they were pretty much blown away. I guess they didn't check it there on the spot, because I would have been pretty surprised, pretty happy to see that. I think there's a couple other pictures that are relevant. This is a sailor from the past. And what he did is he put in a little antique. There's another one, I think. St. Michael playing a guitar. Now, the next one is, this is the, now they were talking about Windsor. And here's Windsor, here's the historic hotel in Windsor, and they mentioned something about a hotel. They said Windsor Hotel. I said, you were in, I thought when they said Windsor, I thought they were talking about a person, or maybe they referred to themselves as their name as Windsor. You know, it turns out that Windsor is in Georgia, and the same spirit kept mentioning the Georgia, you know, metropolitan area near Savannah, and one of the towns they mentioned more than once was Camilla, and then they also mentioned Windsor, and they mentioned the Highway 19, which is one of the major highways that runs through that whole entire area, and then they mentioned hotel, and they said Windsor. And so this is what I came up with right here. Historic Windsor Hotel. Let's see if we can find a little bit of history on it, when it was built. Let's see. But it didn't say much on this website, you know, when it was built, but it's historic. Let's see. Apparently there was, yeah, I heard a lot about the Windsor Hotel. It had a lot of violence that going on in it during Prohibition and everything else. And as far as I know, I don't know for sure, but I heard the Ghost Adventures crew is planning on going there, or have gone there. You know, I haven't seen every single episode of Ghost Adventures, but I have seen most of them. But there it is. Isn't it beautiful? But it's old. I think it was built around probably 1840 from what I believe. But as far as research, this is all I could find, really, that was as good as this. And it's always open, and they give, you know, ghost hunting, you know, tours to there and everything. And, well, anyway, that's it pretty much for the evidence that I have, and hope you guys liked it as much as I did. I enjoyed it, and I didn't think I was going to be able to get to have the privilege to talk to some of the great people I talked to and get some of the stories of this, both you know, people who held important positions and just regular people. A couple of people I talked to there, they said that they passed away from an overdose, and they mentioned the word brick, which I've heard before, and apparently it was a term in the 1970s for a combination of cocaine or methamphetamine mixed with heroin. And so he said overdose, and so I said what exactly, if you don't mind me asking, I said, what exactly did you overdose from? And he said brick. So there you go. I looked it up on a website. I said I just typed in what does brick mean, and it came up with common drug definitions. I said, boom, that's what I'm looking for. There it came up, and it told me exactly what brick was. It's a slang term for that. So that's what I got. I haven't gotten any photos yet. I'm gonna be working on that. But I doubt I'm gonna get any photos here. Even though the spirits may be here, you know, I may or may not get any photos because I really don't have any kind of ultraviolet or night vision or anything like that that can pick up. You know, all it's gonna do is just take a picture of the darkness, you know, pretty much. So but I'll be doing some more, and so look forward to seeing some more research as it comes by, as I do it. And I know it's a long video, but there's a lot of evidence that I need to go over. And I realize not everybody watching this is familiar or experienced in this field, so I just want to kind of break it down, how the words work and how the combinations work, and that they can't always speak in full sentences. They usually speak in one or two words, being that they have to pick words from the database that's within the Ovilus or the spirit box. But with the spirit box, even though it has a word database, it generates white noise so that it sweeps through a ton of channels all at once within a matter of seconds, and it gives the spirit an opportunity to actually speak using that generated additional white noise to actually make a full sentence sometimes, which is rare, but it happens. But usually they'll speak in 4 or 5 words, and they get a Class A, you know, voice coming through there. It's pretty rare, and it's pretty good when it happens. But usually you'll get like what you get on an Ovilus or any other spirit box. You'll get like 2 or 3 words. But the day I get a full sentence will be a good day, so I'm looking forward to that. I hope you guys are too. So I'll see you guys next video.